Hi, folks. I'm back today to talk about another 1930s forgotten film that nobody cares about, except maybe a tiny bit of you. I'm still wondering when people are going to be coming out from the woodwork that are into horror films, and in particular, really old horror films. But I think that day will come eventually. I'm optimistic. So, anyway, Happy New Year and all that stuff. Okay, this film is from 1933, and it's called The Secret of the Blue Room. This has been a very elusive universal horror film. Again, I use the term horror loosely. This is not really a horror film. It has some like creepy trappings, but it's basically a mystery, a whodunit, a thriller, words like that, not so much horror. And for people that like the universal horror films, there's a lot of these films that have kind of slipped through the cracks over the decades. They're not the first films that come to mind when we think of Universal. Back in the old days, when the television stations showed a lot of these in the shock theater package, a lot of them didn't make it, or a lot of them were not seen. Um, this is one I don't recall seeing. It's one that's harder to track down. It's just been recently released on Kino Lorber Blu-ray, so that helps to be able to get a hold of it. And it's funny because I did have two copies of this film previously, unofficial copies, 16 millimeter or very rough shape copies. And I've always started the film many times and just never got past the 10 or 15-minute mark. I don't know why, for one reason or another, but it's a lot easier to watch and take in this new release. It's in good quality, very good quality. Well, The Secret of the Blue Room from 1933 stars Lionel Atwill, and I've mentioned that name a bunch of times. He's done other 30s films like Mystery of the Wax Museum, Dr. X, Murders in the Zoo, and he's very, very known in the horror community from that era, the 30s and the 40s. So he's in there. Also, Gloria Stuart. Gloria Stuart, who before this was in 1932's film The Old Dark House, directed by James Whale, who did Frankenstein. But she also, after this, would go on to star in The Invisible Man with Claude Rains. A lot of people will know Gloria Stewart, more modern audiences, as the older lady version of Rose in Titanic. Okay, so that's where she got a job when she was really at the end of her life, pretty much, in that film. Well, this is a movie that is a very slight film. It's got a lot of creepy haunted house kind of atmosphere, if you like that sort of thing. The idea is that the Gloria Stewart character is just turning 21. It's midnight, it's her 21st birthday, and she's sitting there with her father, and she's sitting around the table with a few eligible suitors, you might say, who actually have a crush on her. They think she's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. They all love her. They find her attractive. They all would love to marry her and all this. And after they celebrate her birthday, they sit around and tell old ghost stories. One of them being a story told by her dad, Lionel Atwill, that 20 years earlier, when she was just a baby, in the Blue Room in the mansion that they're in, or castle, there were murders committed. And they were never solved. And nobody ever knows why. And her father is really hesitant to bring this up and to really divulge all this. But he does. And then the idea comes about to have a little challenge to see if all the men that are sitting around and are interested in Gloria Stewart can each spend one night apiece in the Blue Room. They want to show who's the bigger man, show who's most brave, courageous, who really deserves to have the young lady's hand, so to speak. So that's really the gist of it. Can they survive a night in this Blue Room that has a terrible history? And it's kind of a weird thing. I mean, why you have to go along with it if you're watching a movie like this, but you wonder there's so many plot holes and questions here that you could be asking why would anybody want to do that when there's been murders in that room and so forth. But that's the idea. One night, one person will spend it, one of the guys, and then if he survives the night, or even if he doesn't, the second person will go there and spend the night. And if he survives, or even if he doesn't, the third person has to. That's the idea behind it. And I tell you, as I think about the movie now, I must say I was surprised when they reveal in the mystery who the killer is, I must admit I was surprised. I didn't really know. There were a lot of potential killers here, a lot of potential suspects, and a couple of red herrings here and there, and like usual in these mysteries. There were a lot of cliches in here. You have windy, howling nights and dark corridors and things. There's a lot of typical settings that you would expect in these movies from years later. Like, it's become a cliche, a lot of cliches by today's standards. But remember, the movies that came earlier did them first. So even though if you watch it now and you've seen a lot of movies like this, remember the years these came out. They were ahead of today's movies. But yeah, so I was kind of surprised, and it was I didn't see it coming who the murderer was when revealed. However, now that I know, I say, that was pretty stupid. I should have been able to figure it out, kind of thing. You know what I mean? That's a lot of times like that in these mysteries. At first it's like, well, I didn't see that coming, and then when you think, I don't know how I missed it. But yeah, the cast is very good in this. I say Lionel Atwill, and you have Gloria Stuart, but also Paul Lucas from Budapest, who has an accent kind of like Bela Lugosi. He's good in this too. Edward Arnold, Onslow Stevens, William Janney. It's a good cast. But the movie itself is just It's okay. It only runs a little over 60 minutes. I think it's 66 minutes to be exact. Um, it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's like I said, a slight kind of film. On a scale of 4 stars, I can only give it 2 stars, or if you will, average. It's an average movie. It's not above average, not necessarily good, but it's not poor. So yeah, I think it's got good direction here too. I should say by Kurt Newman, who was only in his 20s. I think he was 25 when he directed this. The direction keeps some of the things interesting. Some of the POV shots and some of the way he stages things is keeps your attention. So yeah, it's worth a watch. That's about it. Now, as you know, I'm going to continue to do movies like this from the 30s and the 40s, horror films. Occasionally, I'll be throwing in other films. If I keep this channel going, which I hope to, there aren't just going to be these types of films. They're going to be films from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, the 2000. I say that very loosely. No, but yeah, we'll see how it goes. You never know what to expect. And the more attention I get, the more I'm inclined to do it. The less attention that I get here, naturally you figure, well, what am I doing it for? But anyway, hope you enjoyed watching this. Yeah, I was really feeling it today. So later.